are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome to Weather Watch on Germantown Municipal Television. I'm your host, Finnegan Gruggett, a student at Houston High School. On today's show, Chief John Selberg with the Germantown Fire Department is here to talk about preparing for the cold and what steps you can do to prepare for the winter months ahead. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
So would you mind explaining to the viewer at home who you are and how you got interested into the fire department?
Well, I'm the fire chief out here now, but back years ago, I was going to Germantown High School because we didn't have a Houston High School, and became interested in the volunteer program and decided to try it out. But I'd never planned on being a firefighter. I always wanted to be a pilot, but that worked out for me very well, and I got on to pay my way through college and never left. Got in my heart and had to stay.
So how many full-time firefighters and paramedics are with the department?
We've got about 86 full-time personnel. We've also got about 25 reserves or volunteers with us.
So what type of equipment do you have with the fire department? Engines, ambulances?
Each station has a fire engine. We also have a truck company that's the ladder truck. We have 3 ambulances staffed at all times at the fire stations. Then, of course, a lot of staff vehicles, and our battalion chief has a vehicle, and some specialty vehicles.
Some of those special vehicles, do you have any that will help you reach patients, say if they were on the Greenway and they're dealing with some heat-related illness?
We do. We have a couple of ATVs. One of them is one of those John Deere Gators, but then we also have our mini ambulance that is actually enclosed, has air conditioning. We have a full stretcher in it, and it's an off-road vehicle, so we can get in the Greenway and get down the trails, or if they're in the event of a disaster, you could get through areas that were damaged.
So are there access points along the Greenway to put in that gator into the Greenway?
Correct, and they've mapped it out, so we'll know when you call in, you say where you're at, and we'll know which access point to use to get in there to you.
Is there any specific time when you see more heat-related illnesses during the year?
You'll see them a lot when this first starts to get hot, because people aren't quite accustomed to it yet, and they're still trying to push themselves at the same rate outside. So we get a lot of those, when it really gets brutal and you got special events like the festival, things like that, people are out there and just get overheated.
Do you guys have a command truck where you can monitor the weather, say for the Germantown Festival?
We do. We have a command and communications truck that has a weather system in it. We can monitor the weather with a pretty neat little program and let the people know if something's coming. We've had the horse show where we told them, hey, let's stop the next round and let's hold off because you're getting ready to get hit by some storms. In about 10 minutes, you can start back up, and that's very helpful.
Is there any type of communication equipment to help communicate to outside agencies in the event of a natural disaster?
Yes, we have a ton of different ways to talk to other people through our regular radios, our 800 megahertz, our VHF, UHF. We also have satellite phones, satellite radios, ham radios, so a lot of different capabilities.
How does the weather impact the Germantown Festival? Are there more calls when it's hot or when it's raining?
More when it's hot. That's our biggest issue down at the festival, and a lot of our special events, some of the football tournaments. You're dealing with people that are getting overheated out there, so that's probably the biggest thing we have.
On the scene of a fire, how do you keep the firefighters cool when they're fighting the fire?
Well, we do, while they're fighting the fire, we don't do much, but once they get outside, we'll rotate out. And, if you ever watch a fire, you'll see a bunch of people sitting around outside. Well, those are in rehab. They've finished fighting fire inside for a little bit. They come out, we'll have them go through medical checks. We'll do cooling for them if they're overheated. We even have cooling vests and different ways, or if it's serious enough, we'll do IVs on them and that type of thing. And
so, when do you see brush fires in the area? When's the most prevalent time for those?
Right now is a prevalent time for, except for today with the weather going through. But this time of year, the late fall, when it's very dry, we have the drought going that we've had out here. You see a lot of them that time. Sometimes in the early spring before the new grass is coming out, you'll see it.
Do you have any special piece of equipment that's just used for brush fires?
Yes, we have a brush truck that it's basically a pickup truck, four-wheel drive pickup truck that has a tank on the back of it and a pump, so we can actually go off-road to put those fires out.
Now, where's that brush truck located, and is there any reason it's located at that station?
Currently, it's at the fire station on Dogwood Road. Believe it or not, we were actually talking today about the possible need to relocate it. But usually out in that area, we have more of the open land that has the fires, and we have a place for it out there to store it.
Will that brush truck go to mutual aid fire calls in the county if they have big brush fires?
They do. We go often on mutual aid with the county and other fire departments.
Do you guys have any pull lines or jump lines from the fire engines themselves that could fight a brush fire so you don't have to pull the big hoses off?
We have some small ones. We call them trash lines or booster hoses that we can pull off to give us a real quick, small hose line to put out a fire like that.
Okay, and does high wind impact the fire engines when they're responding to the calls?
It affects the fire. You always have to know which way the wind's blowing, because you get downwind of it and it's blowing the fire at you, then you run into a problem. That's what a lot of the wildfire firefighters have to deal with.
So if there is a house fire and you're dealing with wind, would you position firefighters to the house next door in case the wind's blowing towards that house?
Correct. Our first objective is life, but then property, and we want to make sure that the fire doesn't spread any further. So a lot of times you'll see us show up at a house fire, but we start spraying the other houses around it because we want to keep them from burning also.
Now, does Germantown have a swift water rescue team since the Wolf River's along the Germantown border?
Yes, we do. We have a pretty good team, about 12 swift water rescue technicians. About half of them are also trained as boat operators. We have 3 swift water boats that we can use, a flat bottom and 2 inflatables, for depending on the type of situation. Have a pretty good team.
Have you ever had to use them to rescue anyone?
The last one I remember was earlier this year. We had some on the Wolf River out past Collierville that we had to go rescue, and it was basically a bunch of kayakers that have turned over. We've had some other kayakers roll over in the Wolf River in Germantown, and some of that ended up a bad outcome.
Does the Swift Water Rescue Team ever respond to mutual aid calls, or is it just specifically for Germantown?
That one that we went to, the first one I mentioned, was a mutual aid. We worked with the Sheriff's Department. The local fire departments didn't have boats, so we provided that.
Now, do you have one of those Humvee-type vehicles that can float as well as go on land, or is that just the county's vehicle?
The county has one. We have access to using it, and actually we've used it a fair bit on some water rescues that we were doing mutual aid, but we don't have one specifically here in Germantown.
Also, does the Germantown 911 Center set off the tornado sirens now, or is it the Shelby County EMA?
Ours in Germantown are completely controlled by Germantown. We have 15 sirens out here, so we do all the activation ourselves. We actually have recently got a new weather system where we monitor the weather closer, and then if we see that a tornado warning is not affecting Germantown, even though it's affecting part of the county, in the past we would sound it if it was any of the county, but now only if it actually affects Germantown. So it's a lot nicer for us. We don't have to evacuate schools and hospitals and things if it doesn't really affect us.
Well, we have to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute to talk more with Chief Selberg. Please stay with us.
Get caught buzz driving, and you could do some hard time.
Craig, knock it off.
Sorry, Mom.
It could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And that could set you back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning. Why?
Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this.
You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately.
That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please.
Don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say, It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Finnegan Gruggett and you're viewing Weather Watch. We'll continue our discussion about fire prevention with Chief Selberg. So during this time of the year, many people are turning on their heaters. Is there any tip you would give them while turning that on, and are there any major risks with that?
One of the big things we run into when people first turning them on for the first of the year, they've had some dust build up and everything in them, so they're going to have like a burning smell. A lot of times it's just from it heating up for the first time of the year. Also, if you haven't had it serviced and it's been doing some rusting or something, you can have some issues. The carbon monoxide is a big concern for us this time of year. If you have any vent pipes that are leaking or anything into the house, that's why we always recommend having CO detectors in your home.
Now, is there any data that proves that fires are more likely to happen during the winter months due to space heaters and regular heaters being on?
Yes, you just look at the, we'll plot out how many fires we have each month, and you can see this time of year it's usually a heavier month, but it's also because of the heaters. People are using electricity harder. The space heaters that are, if you put them too close to tablecloth or a curtain or the bed or something like that, they'll have them get overheated, or they get knocked over, or they short. We'll even have a lot of them that'll short out. So.
Now, is there anything the department does to prepare for natural disasters? Are y'all affiliated with any programs across the region?
A lot of different things that we do. One of the things we realize with disasters is that you as a homeowner and me as a homeowner can't expect the fire department to be able to handle everything when a disaster strikes. So we try to train people on what to do. We have our Community Emergency Response Team class, which they call CERT, and it trains people on the basic things that you would do to protect you and your family in the event of a disaster. Then a lot of us are also trained in, with the Urban Search and Rescue program. We do constant training on mass casualty and different types of responses that are similar to that.
So what effect does Task Force 1 have in the event of a natural disaster?
Well, the nice thing is that it's one of the premier rescue teams in the country, and it's here. So if we have something large happen, we can respond in here and provide assistance. We also have a lot of experience by going to other locations throughout the country.
Are any of the members on the fire department part of that?
Correct. I am. There's probably at least half a dozen that are members of that team.
Okay, and the CERT class, so a regular citizen can sign up, and are they just trained to help their house and the neighborhood around them until the fire department can get to them?
Yeah, they're really trying to kind of serve as a coordination point for that neighborhood, to help them understand, the basics of search and rescue, how to shut off gas lines, when you have gas leaks, because if you have damage to your house from a tornado, you're going to have gas leaks.
And you mentioned gas leaks. Does Germantown have a hazmat team?
Correct. We actually have one of the few in this part of the state, the only one in this side of the state that's actually state certified. Got a really nice hazmat team.
Are they used often, or are things pretty?
Well, fortunately, we don't have to use them to the full extent where we have to go into the suits and everything, but we use them a pretty good bit for monitoring for gas leaks and that type of thing, and if we need to go to that next level, they're able to.
Now, does the weather have any impact on how you prepare for a train derailment due to high wind or rain?
Yes, it does somewhat. It provides a little obstacle to us to have to work around. Depending on if you have victims, you want to protect them from the weather. The wind obviously is going to create issues if you have a fire or you have a gas leak, something like that. So those do, and the rain itself will actually hinder you with gases.
Now, with the gas leaks, do you guys have weather stations across the city to help if there were a gas leak to tell them which direction the gas would be moving, or do you have to go to the weather service for that?
We would have to go to the weather service. We also, through our program through WeatherBug, we can monitor different locations throughout the city and see the wind directions. Then we can also establish some of our own, put them out there to monitor those key points.
So does snow and sleet have any impact on the response time? And do you have snow chains for the fire trucks and ambulances?
We have automatic snow chains, which is really great because the old days when you had to put on the old chains, these you just flip on when you get into an area that's too slick and then turn off, because most of the time out here in this part of the country, we don't have where everything is covered in ice. We just have little back pockets of it. So you want to be able to turn them on and then pull them back off.
Now, are the firehouses, do they have generators in case the power goes out?
All of our fire stations have emergency generators that can run them for days if need be.
Now, do they have special shoes they wear when they go out on a call during the winter?
We've had some of the ice cleats that some of the people have worn, particularly with our EMS, our paramedics, and treating people that, during that time of year we have a lot of fall injuries. And usually that's because there's a lot of ice around, so we want to make sure our paramedics can actually stand up and not fall also.
Now, when you're fighting a house fire during the winters, if there were a winter storm, is there a different approach to the rehab you do to the firefighters?
Believe it or not, sometimes we have to warm them up instead of cool them off, for a fire in the winter. And we can get some brutal weather out here sometimes while we're fighting a fire. It'll affect, the possibility of your hoses freezing. We've had fire hydrants that have been frozen up. So you take a lot of extra precautions for that.
Now, as we're talking about winter weather, is there anything that can lessen the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning in someone's house?
Well, the big thing is, having a carbon monoxide detector. Those are pretty simple, but also, having your unit serviced. If you have any concerns about it, we actually can come out and monitor it. Usually MLG&W can also do that, or your HVAC company. Just make sure your vents and everything, vent pipes are all secure, so the CO is basically going out of the house.
Do you have any tips for families how to prepare for winter storms or natural disasters?
A lot of it's common sense, is being prepared if the power's going to be out for a few days. I think we got over 10,000 people power outage in Shelby County right now. So being prepared to not have electricity, have some, food and water, backup plans to basically take care of yourself and not have to rely on somebody else.
Now, does the department have a backup plan if there were a natural disaster? If, say, the fire department personnel couldn't get off for several days, do they have the necessary food in place?
We do have some. We have some similar to the military meals ready to eat that we could do, but we could only last so long also if we have a lot of personnel there.
Okay. And what's the process of calling personnel in if there were a natural disaster?
We have multiple ways. We can do it through little pagers that we have to let people know we have a working fire. We do that with our volunteers. We also do call trees, and we're actually setting up a system where we can actually notify them via email.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this quick break. Please stay with us.
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 68 children is diagnosed with autism. That's about a 30% increase in 2 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix the beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw in the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. We want to spend our last moments talking about the fire department's response to natural disasters that have impacted Germantown in the past and how they have affected today's response from the fire department. So as we begin, first I want to focus on the tornadoes that impacted Germantown. What immediate role did you play during that disaster?
I became the on-scene instant commander for the operations that were at the house where the victims were.
Now, leading up to that disaster, was there any heads up that the storms were coming, and what did you guys do to prepare?
We knew the storms were coming. We didn't know the severity of them. We actually started getting calls on the other side of Germantown for damage from the winds and everything. Luckily, one of our fire stations, they saw it going over, and they actually activated the tornado siren on their own because there had been no tornado warning issued yet.
Now, when a tornado warning is issued, do the firefighters also take shelter and go into their tornado safe area?
When they can. Sometimes they're out already in their trucks, responding, and they just basically have to do what they can to protect themselves.
So what were some of the things that you saw during the tornado or after the tornado?
Well, one of the first obstacles was getting to it. The trees and power lines down. The roads, most of them were impassable. Luckily, I knew some of the back roads, and I was able to get in there pretty quickly. But then coordinating the large response of all the different agencies. Memphis sent a lot of crews in to help us. Some of the other departments that we're coordinating with Shelby County. So coordinating that, communicating with them, and basically getting a grasp on what all had happened and what we needed to do.
So how long did it take to search the houses in the immediate area?
It went on for most of that day and into the next day for those. The house where we had victims, we were there for a good couple days before we found all the victims.
How long did it take to get to the victims themselves?
We had some initial victims that were found as soon as we arrived. Then 2 victims we weren't able to locate. We used search dogs and our technical search equipment to go in to locate them.
Now, does Germantown have search dogs, or did you guys use an outside agency?
We've used the search dogs that are with the Tennessee Task Force 1, the Urban Search Rescue Team that we all work with. Actually, at the time, I believe we had a couple of the dogs on the team that were handled by Germantown firefighters. We don't at this time.
Now, did you guys have issues going to the scene with nails and debris being in the road?
Oh, yes. A lot of our vehicles, funny thing was I was actually giving the guys a hard time about all the flat tires they were getting. And after 2 days of working on the scene, I went to get in my car and it was sitting there with a flat tire. So it didn't look so good for me.
So is there the first responders that are immediately on the scene, is there any specific thing they're supposed to do to clear the way for the canine dogs and stuff to come in?
Yeah, when we bring in the dogs, we've usually had time to control it, but those dogs are used to working in debris that has a lot of danger. And that's one of the things we train them for. You'll hear a lot of people say about wearing, pads on their feet and everything. Well, that gives them difficult to maneuver. So we don't do that on most of our dogs. So they're used to that, but we still have to try to keep it as safe as we can for them.
Now, what's the difference between the technology then when you were searching for victims and say now if a tornado were to move through?
A lot of the technology is very similar. The search cameras, but they've improved. We have a lot more infrared capabilities and thermal capabilities. We also, the listening devices, where you can actually hear if someone's in there. In a certain situations, you can even hear a heartbeat. But you have to have a lot of quiet around you to be able to pick that up. So a lot of those have got better, but they're just kind of improved versions of what we had back then.
Did you have any command vehicles out there with some of that equipment in it?
Back then, we had a motorhome that the police department used. They set up at Germantown Middle School and helped coordinate a lot of the activities in that area.
Now, from that natural disaster, is there anything that you added to the firefighters' PPE to help in the event of a natural disaster, or were they pretty prepared?
I think we just make sure we have PPE, that's our turnouts, that we're able to move around in very well. Because when you have to crawl through a building and you're not really fighting fire, but you still have the same protection on, you want to have something that you can work in real easily.
So are the everyday firefighters trained for search and rescue, or did you have a specialized unit?
All of them are trained in the basics. We have personnel that are trained in specialized areas, and we have special operations team, that's trained to the advanced rescue and that type of thing.
Now, is there anything the department learned from that natural disaster that's helping you prepare for another natural disaster if it were to happen?
It did, and it's actually paid off. We've gone to several others similar to that since then. We went to the Union University when it got hit by the tornado real bad. We've been to Moore, Oklahoma. So we learn a lot of the processes and the needs that you have out there. One of the things you don't think about, like we mentioned earlier, was the gas leaks. You don't realize how big an issue that can become, particularly if you got people trapped in there.
So that's the importance of the CERT team. Did you guys have that program back then, or did you guys develop it?
I don't believe we had it back then.
Okay. And now I want to transition to winter weather and the ice storm that moved through. Do you have any role in that disaster?
Yes, I was running all over the place in the ice in the middle of the night.
Now, what happened in Germantown during the ice storm, in case the viewers didn't know?
Well, you know, the biggest thing was you had power outages. I mean, all over the place. And so you were working car wrecks out on the poplar where you couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. And you'd be out there trying to clear, you know, trees out of the road, and we were working with our public works guys, and you would hear the trees snapping above you and coming down. In fact, that's how we first got the initial calls. We were on a fire call, and trees started falling on our fire engine. So you can't even see them most of the time because it's pitch black. So you're like, you hear a tree snap and you get a little concerned where it's going.
So when the power's out, there's some people in Germantown, I assume, that need the power because they have health issues. Do you guys have a list of those people that need the power that you go and check on?
We have some, and then, you know, we have a lot of them that'll call up and ask for assistance, and particularly if they have life support equipment, you know, we'll do what we can to help them out.
Now, were you guys able to go to those calls even once the ice started to build up? Were the snow chains durable enough?
Yes. You know, initially we were handling more serious emergencies, but then when we just were dealing with the people with the power outages, we're able to slow down, get a better handle of it, get all our generators in service, and get those out in the areas.
Now, how long did it take for everything to go back to normal after that ice storm?
Oh, it takes weeks to really get something like that back to normal, but you know, we had all the generators and stuff that had to be reserviced, and you know, had the power finally coming back on for everybody. I know a lot of them here in Germantown were out for days.
Now we have 30 seconds left. Was any equipment lost during that? You mentioned trees were falling around and everything.
No, it didn't really hurt it. We lost a lot of windshields out of police cars that were parked under trees, but I don't think we had any fire trucks that had the trees come down on them.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on to the show. I appreciate you coming out here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. I'd like to thank Chief Selberg for taking the time out of his day to be on our show. If you'd like to learn more about this show or simply watch more of our programs, please visit www.gmtvonline.org. Until next time, this has been Finnegan Gruggett for this month's installment of Weather Watch.